I'm Fabian Eberle from Technical University of Vienna, and as a student representative, I'm happy to share today's tutorial with Catherine Tessier, who will give a tutorial on research ethics in digital sciences. And I'm shortly introduce her. So Catherine is a senior researcher at Onera in Toulouse, and her research focuses on modeling ethical reasoning and ethical issues related to the use of autonomous robots. She's also Onera's research integrity and ethics officer, a member of the French National Ethics Committee for Digital Technologies, a member of Ethics Committee of the French Ministry of Defense, and she's a member of INRIA's Research Ethics Board. Catherine was also part of our first Beyond Compliance workshop last year, where she talked about what ethics is, morals and values. And I'm really excited about what she's going to tell us today and what we are going to hear from her today. So, Catherine, thank you very much. And the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay. So I'm going to, okay. So thank you very much for inviting me again. So this is a very tiny tutorial on research ethics in digital science. And well, I'm going, as a research integrity officer, I'm going to make a small statement because I'm going to make a bit of self-plagiarism here, because a shorter version of this talk was given 2 weeks ago as part of the EU Robin, which is a European project on robotics. This project organized an ethics workshop, and part of this talk is already online. So this is a small statement on that. So I'm going to focus on a particular example here, which is an example of a European project that started in November 2021, which is called Robot Royal. And this is a very interesting project, as indeed this project does not involve, or at least directly involve, human beings nor personal data. But it raises many ethical issues, and I'm going to focus on that as a running example to show how an ethical thought can be conducted on such a project. So the aim of the project, so this is taken from their website. The aim is to, they say that their aim is to design a minimally invasive approach to affect large ecosystems in a positive way. That are their words. So they aim to regulate and also enhance the egg-laying activity of a honeybee queen by replacing her courtyard by a set of robots that feed and nurse her. So I've also taken some matters from a paper that is also available on the project website, and we'll see that in details afterwards. So I've underlined here some phrases that we can find on the description of the project on their website. So they say that it is a minimally invasive approach. It is going to affect large ecosystem in a positive way. So the aim is to replace the courtyard of the honeybee queen by a set of robots to enhance her egg-laying rate. And the protein heel flow is designed to be provided exclusively to the queen and not to the rest of the colony. And this will result in the workers having to engage in more pollen collecting. And they say that this will positively affect plant growth vegetation spreading, fruit and seed production. So in turn, this will support animals as food and ultimately enhance pollination and also lower the competition that honeybees have for nectar with other wild insect species. So they say that the user or the experimenter will be provided with a method that that they can vary as far as the foraging activity of honeybees is concerned, and that in a controlled manner. So the main idea is that they can affect a whole ecosystem, potentially millions of plants, and in consequence, hundreds of millions of animals and other organisms by simply affecting one single living organism in a natural, as they say, and non-invasive way with robots. And finally, they say that the bees will accept the robots, in fact, as conspecific worker bees. So that is an extract of the description of the project and of the aim of the project. So what is interesting here, if we take the European ethics self-assessment for European projects, is that, as I said before, there is no human being involved, no personal data involved, but animals are involved. And those animals, what the interesting point is that, well, they are not vertebrates, and of course non-human primates, etc. And what is interesting here is that insects are not covered by the directive of Europe on the protection of animals used for scientific purposes. So that's the first interesting point. The second point is linked to Section 7, Environment, Health and Safety of the ethics self-assessment. And the questions are, does this activity involve the use of substances or processes that may cause harm to the environment, animals, plants? So, of course, yes. Does this research involve endangered fauna and or flora or protected areas? Well, no, because bees are not especially endangered fauna, especially honeybees, which are domestic animals, in fact. And third question is that this activity involve the use of substances or processes that may cause harm to humans, including those performing the activity, etc. So this question, the answer of this question is not clear because there is uncertainty, of course, of the consequences of the research. And the last point is that the answer for Section 8, artificial intelligence of this ethics self-assessment. So yes, this project involves artificial intelligence-based systems, as in fact they intend to train their model that will be put inside the robots on the study of the bees' behaviors inside the beehive. So they are going to train their data from the real behaviors of the bees. So that being said, here is the overview of the talk today. So I'm going to focus first on the vocabulary, which I did already last year. Very quickly on thought experiments to talk about the ethical frameworks, which are tools that are very useful to put in place an ethical deliberation. And we are going to focus on a short, of course, very short, ethical analysis of that particular situation, that particular project. And then we will conclude on more research ethic questions and to conclude on some recommendations. So let's focus first on the vocabulary. So let's begin with what ethics is not. So ethics, of course, is not the law. So the law is a set of rules of conduct that are designed by or come from a sovereign authority. For instance, I've put here, of course, the GDPR, which we focused a lot on this morning, and that comes from Europe, which is a sovereign authority, and everybody has to abide by the law, of course, and if not, well, the person or people will be exposed to some condemnation or that are also written in the law. Ethics is not staff regulation. So I've put here the staff regulation of the European Commission Civil Servants, which is entitled Staff and Ethics, which is a bit confusing. We are going to see that afterwards. And staff regulations has to do with the rights and duties inside an organization. For instance, here the European Commission. And if somebody does not abide by staff regulations, well, this person will probably be punished, but according to this organization, it would not be according to the law. And the third point is that ethics is not deontology. It has to be different from deontology. Deontology is indeed a code of conduct which comes from a profession. We all know the deontology of medical doctors, for instance, or lawyers. And I've put here the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, which is intended to be applied by researchers inside the European community. And what is interesting here is that this code was updated very recently. It was updated in June 2023, and especially there are added paragraphs concerning authorships, which is very important, of course, as far as research integrity is concerned. So, as I said already last year, ethics has to do with morality and values. So, but it is different. Ethics is different from morality. So I'm going to consider ethics as different from morality here. So what is morality? It's a set of rules and principles according to which one directs one's life and behavior. So morality has to do with good and evil, and describes what is right and what is wrong. So morality comes from society. Usually there's a social consensus on what is right and what is wrong in society. It can come also from religion, or it can come from yourself. What is interesting here is that morality is normative, so it's a kind of norm that governs the behaviors in a society. So, for instance, moral principles are given here. So it's bad to lie, it's bad to steal, etc. Ethics has also to do with the values. So what are values? Values are something that is desirable, that you stand up for. And again, values come from society, are set by society, can be set by yourself, by religion, etc. And you can be in a situation where you you are obliged to broke the value, especially what is called a situation of dilemma. So we'll see that afterwards. So examples here of values are honesty, benevolence, respect of human dignity, etc. So what is ethics? So ethics, what is important here, and I will keep this term in that sense, in that talk, ethics is a personal or more often a collective thought, reflection about human behaviors and values that they are based on. So ethics is an approach that aims to wonder about topics, situations, and possible decisions and actions, and this takes place along the way. So in fact, ethics reflection, ethics thought does not stop. So it's an approach that aims at behaving or acting at best. So it is not the best, but it's at best in a specific context. So ethics is in context. And that is to say, if you have to decide on something, ethics helps at determining what can be considered the right decision or action in this particular context, and according, which is the most important here, according to arguments that are based on a scale of values. Therefore, ethics does not command, as would, for instance, morality, but ethics recommends. And indeed, an ethical debate is based on conflicts between values, because in most situations that raise ethical issues, there are conflicting values or principles or several things that cannot be satisfied at the same time. So if we consider ethics in a nutshell, ethics is different, or especially in English, more than compliance, because in English, ethics is often considered in the sense, in the meaning of compliance. But I will consider here ethics in a different way, or in English, more than compliance. Why that? Because saying what should or should not be done is not sufficient. That's the first point. The second point is that ethics does not stop once we have ticked boxes, for instance. No, ethics is a continuous thought that evolves all the time, especially as technology evolves. And third point, ethics has to do with dilemmas. And what is a dilemma? Dilemma is a moral dilemma, is a situation where a decision is not compliant. That's an important point. And you have to make trade-offs between principles, between what has to be satisfied. And indeed, in such a situation, some elements are going to be not compliant. And that's very interesting. So I've taken here extracts from a French report that was issued in 2021. That's a report of the National Committee on Ethics. And I'm going to base the analysis on the B project, especially on those phrases, because they are very interesting to lead the ethical debate, the ethical deliberation. So it is said in this report that ethics is a collective deliberation, always to be resumed because technology evolves, because society evolves, and that must make the difference between the possible, especially what is possible as far as science is concerned, and the acceptable, especially what is acceptable as far as society is concerned, as far as environment is concerned, and so on. So we have new knowledge, especially as science evolves, and this new knowledge complicates or shifts the scope of our questioning. And this often increases our uncertainties. So there are many uncertainties with new technologies, especially what is called AI technologies, and we have to cope with this. So ethical reflection, therefore requires us to question the principles that define the very notion of progress. So we have to assess whether, for instance, a scientific progress is also a moral progress or a societal progress. Then each time progress is invoked, we must critically analyze the certainties and convictions. We all have certainties and convictions that underlie this progress. This critical analysis must be based, on the one hand, on values, moral values, and on the other hand, on the most lucid possible assessment of the benefits and risks. So we have here in this sentence, we have the main two ethical framework, in fact, that is the ontological framework, that is the analysis of values or principles, and the consequentialist framework, which is the analysis of the consequences, and especially the consequences in terms of benefits and risks, which is in fact, the European approach in the AI Act. But listing these values to define a so-called ethical environment is not enough. Any particular issue requires them to be articulated in order to find the best possible balance when they come into competition. So that's what I already said. In a situation where there is a dilemma, you have to find a balance between the values or the principle or the requirements. So I'm going to very quickly focus on thought experiments, the particular thought experiments you all know, but that's only to introduce the basic ethical framework that are very useful to use as tools for the ethical thought and the ethical analysis. So first of all, what is a thought experiment? It is a situation that is not a realistic situation, but that will help us to, as said Ruben-Augien, to identify more clearly the factors that influence our moral judgments. So I'm going to focus on a very, of course, very well-known thought experiment, which is the trolley dilemma. I'm not going to spend much time on that, but that's only to introduce the three basic moral framework that are very useful to use as tools for an ethical analysis of a particular situation or a particular project. So the famous trolley dilemma is described as follows. So you have a runaway trolley, which is hurtling down the tracks towards 5 people who are on the track. And these people won't be able to move out of the way. So don't ask why they are there, why they are not able to move out of the way, etc. That's not the problem here. So you are the white guy here, and you are standing beside a lever that is connected to the track. And if you pull the lever, the tram will be diverted down the side track, on which there is one person who won't, again, be able to move out of the way. So the question is, what is your decision? I pull the lever, I don't pull the lever. So indeed, when you propose this kind of situation to a group of people, most of them will pull the lever. So why this? Because they use what is called the consequentialist moral framework, and the human being is very consequentialist. So we very often reason in terms of consequences of the actions. So in this framework, the right decision is the action whose outcomes, that is to say, the consequences, are the best. So we have, of course, to define what does the best means. That is to say, according to what? So what does mean the best? So here the best, in fact, is in terms of number of people who are alive or who are dead. So we can distinguish here what is called positive consequentialism, which is to maximize good. That is to say, in this particular situation, 5 people alive against one person alive. And on the other hand, negative consequentialism, which is to minimize evil, that is to say 1 dead and 5 dead, which in this particular situation is the same, result, but it could be in some more complex and realistic situation, it could be different. So there are many consequentialist sub-frameworks, for instance, utilitarianism, which is to design the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Selfishness is also one particular sub-framework. It is the greatest good for oneself. And the precautionary principles, which was set in Rio de Janeiro some years ago, some 1982, I think. It is to minimize the risk. So it is reasoning in terms of benefits and risk. So a second way to set this thought experiment is to characterize the people who are on the track. So, for instance, it is exactly the same situation, but the 5 people are on the main track are your relatives, and the people who is on the side track is the love of your life. So when you propose this situation to the same group of people, their reaction might be different. And why this? Because in fact, there is more emotion involved in the situation, and what is important here, what we can draw as a conclusion from the reaction of people here, is that in fact an ethical thought it always takes place in a particular context. So when you have a situation that is quite like another situation, well, the ethical thought might be different, and the outcome, the decision might be different. So this has to do with the hierarchy of values that you consider in a particular situation, which might be different from a situation to another, even if those situations are very, very close to one another. Another way to set this thought experiment is the so-called footbridge dilemma. So in this particular situation, the situation is a bit different. You are now, so you are still the white guy here, you are now standing on a footbridge above the tram tracks, and the trolley is still hurtling towards the 5 people who cannot move out of the way. And the situation is there is a guy here beside you, standing beside you, and if you push the guy onto the tracks, this guy will stop the tram and will be killed, of course. So the question is, what is your decision? I push the guy, I don't push the guy. So if you propose this situation to again the same group of people, their reaction will be quite different from the previous situation. But in fact, in terms of a consequentialist framework, it is exactly the same situation as before. In fact, it is always 5 dead people against 1 dead person, or 5 alive and 1 dead. So the fact is that if people react differently to that, in a different way to that situation, it's because they don't use the same moral framework. In fact, they use a deontological framework. And in this framework, the right decision is not about the consequences of the action, but it is on the action itself. So the right decision here is the action that respects some principles, whatever the consequences. So it's very difficult to ignore the consequences and only focus on the action, but that's the framework here. So here we can focus on Kant's categorical imperatives, which are the following: act only on that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. So in simple terms, the action that I'm going to do here in this particular situation, can I generalize this action in all situations? And the second one is act as to treat humanity, whether your own person or in that of another, never as means, but always as an end. So in fact here, what is said is that you cannot use a person as a means to meet your purposes. So example of that is always tell the truth, whatever the consequences. And here in this particular situation, the principle that is referred to is do not make an attempt on somebody's integrity. And the third moral framework here is which is a bit more complicated to apply when setting an ethical deliberation. The third moral framework is what is called virtue ethics. And in this footbridge dilemma situation, the decision would be, I jump. The white guy, which is you, will decide to jump themselves. So in fact, the right decision in this framework is about the agent that will take the decision. So the first one, consequentialism, was about the consequences of the action. The second one, deontologic framework, is about the action itself. And the third one is about the agent that is going to take the decision, to make the decision. So the right decision is the action here that will show a particular virtue of the agent. So for instance, courage, caution, etc. And in this particular situation, the virtue will be self-sacrifice. So let's go back to our robots in the beehive and see how we can design an ethical analysis. So of course, I'm going to do it by myself here, but the best way to do it is to have a group of people and to have sufficient time, of course, to discuss all the arguments that are relevant to be put forward to contribute to this ethical analysis. And the most interesting part, in fact, is that when people do not agree together. So that's very interesting, because that shows that the ethical analysis indeed involves values that cannot be met at the same time, and that involves conflicting values or principles. So the first thing I'm going to focus on is that this particular situation, this particular project, may involve a paradox, in fact. So the first part of the paradox is that the project is designed according to some goals. So they say that the project is likely to affect large ecosystems in a positive way, and it will result in the workers, the bee workers, having to engage in more pollen collecting, thus pollinating flights. So that's the goals, the main goals, that are the main goals of the project. And the second part of the paradox is that indeed the project is likely to go against those goals. So why? So the first thing is this project is likely to induce disruption of the hive, because robots are going to be put into the hive. So what will happen? We don't know. And the second point is that this project is likely to threaten pollination and food security. So why that? Because in fact, there is a competition already existing between domestic honeybees that are in the beehives and the wild bees. And the interesting point here is that the more we have domestic bees, the more, the less wild bees are going to survive, because domestic bees are going to take the place, in fact, of wild bees. So there is a balance to find between domestic honeybees and wild bees. And indeed, wild bees, of course, contribute to the pollination. Of course, they are major agents of pollination. So pollination does not rely exclusively, of course, on domestic honeybees, but also on wild bees. So there are uncertainties here about the outcome of the project. And these uncertainties are likely, in fact, to go against the goals of the project. So that's a paradox of the project. That's the first point, main point, that has to be highlighted. So let us consider the deontological point of view, and considering this project and this ethical analysis of this project. So one phrase was to make the difference between the possible and the acceptable. So what is possible in this project? What is possible is to design micro-robots replicating these behaviors. Okay, that is possible from a scientific point of view, from a robotics point of view, from a machine learning point of view, etc. That is possible. Okay, no problem. The second thing that is possible is to put robots into the beehive. Of course, that is possible. So you design micro robots and you put them physically into the beehive. The third point that is possible is to modify the bee's behavior. That is possible. So maybe with uncertainties, we don't know exactly, but that is possible. So what is acceptable? Is it acceptable to design micro robots replicating these behaviors? Yes, that is acceptable, of course. You can, scientifically speaking, design robots replicating animals' behaviors, these behaviors, dog behaviors, etc. No problem, even human behaviors. Okay, that is possible. That may be acceptable. But is it acceptable to put robots into the beehive? Well, that has to be discussed. Is it acceptable? From a deontological point of view. That is to say, is it acceptable to put things that are designed by humans into the colony of the bees? And is it acceptable to modify the bees' behaviors into the beehive? That's a question also. Is it acceptable, and according to what is it acceptable to modify animal behaviors, even domestic animals' behaviors? And then we have further questions about experiments with insects, since there is no law about experiments, no directive about experiments with insects. So is it acceptable to design experiments with insects? And another point is that the robots is related to the robots themselves. What is the sustainability of robots? Is it good for the environment to design many robots, many micro robots that will be put in the beehive? And what about the life cycle of these robots? When they are at the end of their lives, what are we going to do with those robots? How are we going to be? What is the energy that is necessary to make these robots work, etc., etc. The second phrase that is interesting is that question the principles that define the very notion of progress. So here I have considered two principles. Let's consider that as principle. The first one is increase scientific knowledge. Well, that's the job of every researcher, to increase scientific knowledge. That's the main job of scientists and researchers. So indeed, this project meets this principle because it will increase scientific knowledge as far as, on the one hand, robotics is concerned, design micro robots replicating bees' behavior. And on the other hand, another scientific field is that it will probably increase scientific knowledge on ethology, especially studying the bees' behaviors and learning their behaviors. So, okay, that's okay. The principles is met here. A second principle that I have considered here is one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is the 15th one, which reads as protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems and halt biodiversity loss. So here, the project says that they will respect that goal, but in fact there is uncertainty here. We don't know, and according to the paradox that we have seen together, well, it's not sure that this project will contribute to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use and halt biodiversity loss. There are many uncertainties on that principle. So, in fact, let's focus on the uncertainties. So the phrase is critically analyze the certainties and convictions. So I've taken here two paragraphs of the paper that I mentioned before that can also be found on their website. So the paper reads, a small group of robots operating in a honeybee colony and interacting with the queen bee, a central colony element, has the potential to change the collective behavior of the entire colony and thus also improve its interaction with the surrounding ecosystem. So that is said like that in the paper with no evidence, no proof, no arguments. So this has to be questioned, of course. So there are many uncertainties here. Will this indeed improve the interaction of the colony with the surrounding ecosystem? We don't know, in fact. The second paragraph that I've taken here reads as, it is the first step towards a team of robots working in a biocompatible way. So this has to be questioned. Is it indeed biocompatible? To study honeybees and to increase their pollination performance? Well, we don't know. Will robots in the beehive indeed increase the pollination performance? We don't know. Thus achieving a stabilizing effect at the ecosystem level. That we don't know. We don't know at all. So there are many uncertainties here on the outcomes on the project, and this is not questioned at all in the paper. So many uncertainties that are not dealt with at all in the paper or in the project. Let's focus now on the consequences. So the consequentialist framework. So the phrase reads as focus on the most lucid possible assessment of the benefits and risks. So I'm not going to focus again on the benefits because the project lists a lot of benefits, of expected benefits, and we have seen also what is stated in the paper, and that's not question uncertainties, so we've seen that before, but I'm going to focus on risks. So we have to raise questions, first of all, on the effects on bees. Because so the project aims to put micro robots into the beehive, and of course the project aims at changing the behaviors of the bees. So of course there will be changes on the behaviors on the bees, but are the changes are they going to be all expected? So for instance, if the project could result in the bees being stressed, why not? In the bees killing each other, in the bee workers killing the queen, why not? Or the bees becoming lazy because they will be helped by the so to say, by the robots, etc. So we can imagine very changes, a high number of changes, behavioral changes in bees that would be not expected. The second thing is related to the robustness of robots. What happens when a robot or several robots fail, and what is the impact on the bees when they fail? So how are they going to fail? So that's the first question. And when they fail, what will be the effects on the bees? The second main group of the consequences to be assessed are the effects on the environment. So again, that has to do first of all with the robots themselves. So what are the resources necessary to make the robots, to operate the robots? What is their life cycle? So especially when they fail, when they reach the end of life, what are we going to do with those robots? And the second main point is the surrounding ecosystems. So what are the consequences on the surrounding ecosystems that will come through the bees, that will be helped with the robots? So is it going to be harm? What kind of harm, etc. And the third main point is about other uses or even misuses. So that has to do with a more general point of view, which is the use of modified insects to modify ecosystems, because indeed the fact that we put robots into a beehive are going to modify the behaviors of the insects. So we are going to aim at modified insects, that's to say, or augmented insects, we don't know. So that is going to indeed to modify the surrounding environment and to modify ecosystems. And of course, we have to think also of those micro robots that are likely to be used for other ends and especially misuse. So we can imagine those misuse with so small robots. Okay, so that was the very quick ethical analysis on that particular project. And now I'm going to generalize a bit about research ethics questions that we have to raise, especially when dealing with ICTs. So this, I think this meets again what we discussed yesterday. For instance, who funds the research, who subjects the research. So we have to analyze that and how this will influence the way I'm going to do my research. The second thing is, why is this particular topic worth researching? For instance, why is this bee robots in the beehive are particular worth researching? That is to say, what are the motivations? Are they scientific? Are there societal motivation, societal demand? Is it financial motivation? I need money, so I need to deal with projects that offer money. Are there commercial motivation, strategic motivation, etc.? So as a researcher, what is my own interest in this topic? Well, what are my motivations? I like the topic. I like to be inside a renowned team. The lab is in a nice city. Why not? I will be dead. There are international opportunities. There are professional opportunities. So, what are the profound motivation of my research in this particular topic, in this particular research environment? So again, who employs and pays me? And of course, that was discussed yesterday. What about my independence of mind when, for instance, industry, a body from the industry pays me? What is my independence of mind? And of course, there is also a possible conflict between my personal ethics as a citizen and my professional ethics as a researcher, because as a citizen, well, I may be engaged in political bodies, etc. And well, as a researcher, I have to do my research. So maybe there might be conflicts between the two, and if there is a conflict, so what should I do? What should I do? Some further questions about the design of the software of the robot, etc. So I am in a particular project, for instance, bee robots. So what is intended to be assigned to the software, to the device, to the robots? That is to say, which functions are going to be designed and why? That is to say, in the name of what? So in the name of what are we going to design robots that mimic the bee's behavior? What is the motivation of that? What are the principles that are at stake here? And then in a more practical way, is it always possible to express those functions with mathematical concepts, and therefore to program them? And is it possible to catch and encode all the subtleties of those functions? For instance, will it be possible to mimic all the details of the behaviors of the bees in those robots? And is this modeling of reality scientifically sound? And of course, as a researcher, as a person, as a human being, we put subjectivity everywhere, especially in the algorithm, in the code, etc., in the models, in the data. So, what is the subjectivity that is put in the models, in the algorithms, in the data, etc.? And are we able to locate this subjectivity and identify the subjective points that we put into our software? And then the third important point is about the use and future use of the device, of the software. So what are the intended use or uses of this particular software and device? Are they all clear? Are there uses that may be hidden? So we have to raise this question. And is this software or device or robot desirable for these uses? So we have to raise the question about the robots. Are they desirable? And if yes, in the name of what? What are the potential side effects and misuses of this software, this device, these robots? And of course, can a researcher anticipate all the uses and all the effects? It's not an easy question. We as a researcher could anticipate some uses and some misuses, but perhaps not all of them, and especially in the long term. And what are the responsibilities, and especially the moral responsibilities of the researchers? And furthermore, how the conflicts between the principles or requirements, how are they handled? As I said before, there are many conflicting principles or requirements, especially in the international texts dealing with so-called ethics of artificial intelligence. There are a bunch of principles or requirements written in those texts. And what is hardly said is that the principles and requirements cannot be satisfied at the same time. And there are many conflicts between them. So we have to make trade-offs. And this is not explained in the text, of course. So for instance, I will only focus on one of them. So it is the increase of device capabilities. So if we take the examples of robots, especially robots mimicking the behaviors of the bees into the beehive, so those robots will be will have many capabilities, with new capabilities, scientific progress about that robots. So they will be capable of doing many actions into the beehive. So that's one point. And we have to consider that versus the preservation of human in general, but especially in that case, or bees skills. So what about the skills of the living beings when we design objects or devices that have themselves increased capabilities? So how are the human, or more generally the living being skills, being preserved in front of them? And then finally, the question is about users. So in a general way, with the users of the software, the device, the robot, be informed or trained about this device, and how? And will they be trained and informed about what it does not do, what it does not replace? Are there going to be clear cautions about how to use the device or the software? Can the software explain to the user what it is doing? Has the impact of the software or device on the user and on the environment been assessed, especially for the bee robots? To what extent this device or this software is likely to modify the behaviors, so positively, that in fact the intended behavior of the device, and of course negatively, so to the detriment of what? And who controls what is inside the software of the device, especially code and data, where are they stored, for instance, and is the user aware of that? So to sum up, so I've briefly spoken about the international text, which was not the focus on my talk today, but what has to be highlighted is that international text about so-called AI and ethics suggest that a so-called ethical AI is possible. So in fact, the meaning of that has to be discussed, but what is to be highlighted is that ethics is not only tick boxes, compliance, labels, certificates, or law. And moreover, all the criteria that are set out in the text cannot be met at the same time. And that's the room, in fact, for an ethical debate, because all the criteria, principles, requirements, etc., cannot be met at the same time. So ethics is a continuous thought process that does not stop, and it is along the way, and it is mainly a matter of trade-off, especially between principle, values, requirements, etc. So recommendations: 1, avoid thinking only in a utilitarian way, that is to say, reason only on consequences. That's what the AI Act does, in fact, only reason on the risk, that is to say, on the consequences, especially on the bad consequences. So ask also in a deontological way, in the name of what do we do what we do? So question the motivations. So what are the motivations of my research of the intended software, the intended robot, the intended device? Is it to increase knowledge, especially scientific knowledge? Is it to help people or bees? Is it to develop industry? Is it, and that's the reason that we can hear, is it to do as others do? Is it because we believe that the device is better than nothing, etc., etc.? So what are the motivations? We have also to question the criteria, because in our society, it is always better to be quicker, to be cheaper, to increase security, to involve less human, to save environment, etc., etc. So we have to question those criteria. We have also to question the needs that are put forward, and to question whether they are real needs or not, or invented needs. And then, once we dive into the technique, we have to question the choices into the algorithms. So all the choices, not only the data, but also the parameters, the thresholds, the architecture, etc., etc. And then second round of recommendations, and that comes from the UNESCO recommendation of so-called the ethics of artificial intelligence. So that's paragraph 108 that reads, member states should ensure that AI researchers are trained in research ethics and require them to include ethical considerations in their designs, products, and publications, especially in the analysis of the data sets they use, how they are annotated, and the quality and scope of the results with possible applications. So everybody should be trained in ethical thinking. So everybody, students, researchers, engineers, companies, decision makers, policy makers, users, etc. And ethics is not only a matter for ethics experts or so-called ethics experts or ethics officers. Ethical thinking should always be associated with research projects, master thesis, doctoral thesis, etc. And it's becoming to come, but well, it's not generalized at all. Every scientific paper should include a real ethical discussion. And the last point I want to make is that in fact, there is not ethics on the one side and science in the other side, and no link between them. No, ethical issues are tightly interwoven with scientific issues, and an ethical issue that is raised can lead to new scientific developments. And of course, new scientific developments in turn lead to new ethical issues, etc. So last slide, who can help or what can help? Well, talk with colleagues who are aware of ethical issues. Well, there are more and more colleagues, in fact, that are aware, who are aware of ethical issues. There's a name missing here. Learn about the institution's procedures. Talk with the ethics officer inside your institution, if there is one, of course. Ask the Research Ethics Committee of the university for advice, and read papers about ethical considerations in research. There are more and more papers about this particular topic. So in fact, that's it.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for your interesting talk and your deep dive into research ethics. So let's have a round of applause.